One thing you're going to have to be able to do with the working files is actually change where they're getting their data from. All the working files currently save the data with them, but if you want to refresh them, they'll then need to be told where the database is stored on your machine. So having downloaded the working files and installed them on your own machine, whether that's the Excel copies, the Access copies, or the SQL Server copies, whenever you then use one of the working files, you'll need to change its data source location. It's just a one-off job per report. Once you save the report, it then knows where the data is stored. So if we take a couple of examples just to demonstrate how this is done, we have the My First Report, which is a working file available in some of the working folders. To change its data source, we go to Database on the menu bar, come down to Set Data Source Location. Now you'll see the screen is actually split in two. The top half is the address where it's currently getting its data from. So I can see that the data is currently being accessed from C, Users Public, Documents, CR 2011, Databases, sample.accdb. Now unless you actually store the sample.accdb in that exact location, you will need to change the location that this report is looking at. So we're going to replace it with the correct location. So in the bottom half here, we'll just squish up the My Connections folder, and we'll need to look at creating a new connection to the sample.accdb, but in your location. So we come into the OLEDB section. We can't go down the Access route here because that uses DAO, which only uses versions of Access up to 2003. Our ACCDB file is actually a 2007 format. So we come down to OLEDB, click the plus. You're looking for Microsoft Office 12 Access Database Engine. Next, we have to tell it that it's an Access database, not an Excel one. And then you browse for the location on your machine where the database is stored. Now I've actually got a copy stored in a different location. You can see here location 2. Open. No need for a password. The user ID for Access is admin. Next, just gives us a summary and we can click finish. So now in the bottom half, we can see we now have a connection to the second location. So the location on your machine in this case, but in my case that's just location 2. What I then need to do is select from the top half, the report half, the object I would like to replace. So I'd like to replace TBL contacts with the table in this new address called TBL contacts. So as that table gets replaced with this table, update. And you can see the address here has changed. That's enough. My report is now swapped over. I can click refresh the report data, and the data is then being taken from the new location. When I save the report, the new location is saved with the report. Now, there will be times when you need to do this anyway. As you work around with critical reports, you may develop one on a sample database and then need to point it at the real database. So changing the data source location is quite common. One thing to watch for when you change the data source, if we have a little go here, database, set data source location. I'm actually going to make a new connection in the bottom half here because I want to replace this connection. Still an Access database. So I need to tell it it's Access. But what we'll find here, I've got an option here called Sample V2, which is actually the same database, well, the same database sort of. And you'll see what I mean when we go open. That's next and finish. So this is the Sample2 database. And what I want to do is swap that whole database for this whole database here. Update. This time, a problem occurs. Because the data in the new database does not exactly match the data that the report is using, I'm addressed with a set of mapped fields. Well, in this case, unmapped fields. I've got SN and FN in my report, but I don't have SN and FN in the new data. Now, SN is the surname or the last name, and I know that it's called last name in the new database. So I select SN in my report, choose last name from the contacts fields, and map. And then it gets removed from the list. I can then FN to first name and map. So I've been able to map the different names in the report to the different names in the database. So the data now effectively goes in the right place. You can see here in the bottom there are mapped fields. These are the ones it's managed to do itself. And should it not be right, we can unmap them. So should last name be going into the surname? You can see the ones that are mapped, because whichever one you click on, it grays out its friend on the other side. So email goes to email, date of birth goes to date of birth, last name goes to SN, first name goes to FN. So that's just something to watch for when you are attaching yourself to a different data source with a report that already has fields on the actual report itself. So that's okay, the mapping takes place. We can then close the change data source, and I'm now looking at the connection to the new data. So you can do this with any of your reports and point it at any other database. The issue becomes if the new database does not have the same field names as the report currently has. So if all you're doing is changing yourself from pointing from the development database to the live database, it should just change over with no problem of mapping. If what you're doing, however, is trying to take one report and base it on another set of data, then there may be a need for mapping of some of the fields so that it knows where to put the data that comes in with the new database that isn't on your report. And it may be that you cannot map any of the fields, in which case they will be removed from the actual report. So whatever report you are in, we could try the mug sales one. Database, set data source location. This is the current address. You then use the bottom half of the screen here, close up my connections. But it may be that it is one of your connections that you want to attach it to. Go and browse for the right new element. This time it's an Excel file. So it's an Excel file at a different location, location 2, open, finish. This is the new location. This is the current data source of the report. I make sure both of those are selected and update. And then the new location is used as the data source for the report. All the field names match up, so there's no unmapped problem. Close, save, and this report is now attached to the new data source.